Welcome to Target Market Insights, the multifamily and marketing podcast. Each week, John Kasman interviews multifamily and marketing experts to teach you how to find the best places to invest, attract investors, and grow your portfolio. You are listening to Target Market Insights with your host, John Kasman.
Welcome to Target Market Insights. I'm your host, John Kasman, and I want to thank you for joining us for an exciting episode today. Now, if you're enjoying the podcast, do me a favor, take a minute and leave us a 5-star rating and review. And if you haven't already, make sure you hit the subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Now, if you're interested in multifamily investing, I've got something that you need to see. We have a sample deal package available on our website. All you have to do is go to kasmancapital.com/sample deal. Now, in this, you'll get a chance to see how we put together our deals, what you should be looking for, and sign up for more information and more tips and insights on multifamily investing. Again, that's kasmancapital.com/sample deal. Now, today we're going to be talking to John D. Saunders. Now, John leverages digital marketing strategies to build and scale businesses online. He launched 54 Digital, a local boutique agency in Miami, and he also is the man behind blackwallet.org. Let's welcome to the show, John Saunders.
John, what is going on, man? Thank you for having me.
Hey, thank you for coming on. Listen, it's great to talk to you. And, I'm really excited for this conversation today.
Likewise.
Before we dive deep into everything, why don't you take 30 seconds and give our listeners a little bit more information of who you are?
Absolutely. So first and foremost, thank you for having me on the show, John. It's a pleasure, man. I'm glad we connected and got this show rolling. So my name is John D. Saunders, as John recently said. My main focus is I'm a digital marketing strategist. So I help take businesses online via web design, social media, and online tactics like content marketing to help them reach market, be successful, and get a return on ROI. And so the biggest thing for me is really value-based content. As we all know from Gary Vee and other marketers, it's always a good idea to be transparent, provide content on the front end, and just do it without looking for something in return. That's helped me build my business and build a referral business big enough where we can work on the amazing projects and collaborations that we have, as well as create our own internal projects like blackwallet.org, as well as online courses. So, dude, I'm super excited, man. I'm happy to talk about SOPs, marketing, building a team, whatever you want to get into.
No, I love it. So you mentioned Gary Vee. I mean, that's that jab, 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 right hook, right philosophy of
Most
giving
definitely
value to your audience. And that's actually how we kind of came across each other. You know, I was following blackwallet.org and saw a couple of different posts. I think that somehow got me to follow you directly on Twitter. And I was really impressed with the content you were providing on Twitter. Your handle is John D. Saunders,
Yes.
at John D. Saunders, right? So I was really impressed with the content that you were putting out because it wasn't just fluff or very high level, hey, follow me to learn how to do this. What I thought was very impressive is you were actually leveraging Twitter in a way that I hadn't seen anyone else doing. And what I mean by that is you weren't just promoting links. You weren't just pushing people to your YouTube video or pushing people to your website. You were actually using those threads to give the content and give the information right there on Twitter in 140 characters or less, which again, seems very complex and difficult to do. Talk to me a little bit about kind of how you were able to do that and what is the philosophy behind leveraging Twitter? And we'll talk about more, but specifically, just let's start with Twitter and kind of why you were giving away content in that fashion.
Yeah, so for me, one, I'm a father and a husband. I have a 2-year-old son. We read him a few books every single night, right? And so as you're reading a storybook, you're having these detailed, very comprehensive ideas compressed into these bite-sized chunks by these children's books, right? So each page will have a few sentences, a picture, and it'll kind of resonate with the next image. So what I did was I took that concept and added it to Twitter, because with Twitter, you only get 180 characters, like you said. I think it's like 220 now, a little bit more, but still nonetheless not that much. Take that concept and kind of break down these detailed marketing strategies into, okay, if I had to explain this to someone that had no idea what I was talking about, how could I get my point across by still making it detailed enough where they can actually execute with that information? Instead of saying, hey, you need to post 5 times a day on social media, saying, hey, you need to have a definitive idea of the times you want to post, the type of content, create a template, etc. And so what I did was I created those threads on Twitter, and then I'll snapshot all those threads and add them to Instagram. So I'm taking that one concept, that one idea, which would essentially be like a mini blog, making it really easy step-by-step directions on Twitter through a thread, and then taking those screenshots and adding them to Instagram so I can reach that audience as well. And ultimately, man, that's where I saw just a fundamental shift in who I was reaching. And again, man, I've been creating content for 5 years, YouTube videos, all types of content. But when I hit this content and I saw the engagement, the comments, the people giving me feedback and asking questions, I knew that I had a hit on my hands. So ultimately, it just came down to using just life experiences to create these functional marketing strategies and taking those online and just testing them out and seeing what works.
No, I love it. You mentioned kind of the mini blog approach to it and seeing that was working. You have been creating content for 5 years. What was it about this approach that seems to work really well versus maybe some of the other tactics you were trying over the last 5 years?
So this year, I decided to really focus on Instagram because I saw that a lot of our audiences were migrating there. Instagram and LinkedIn still have, LinkedIn probably has the best organic reach, but Instagram is still kind of behind, is a little bit behind LinkedIn. Of course, Facebook organic reach is like 0, right? So in regards to Facebook, you have to be doing some type of ad marketing. But when I saw that Instagram was getting a lot of recognition in regards to micro-sized content, and I had already booked a couple clients through Instagram that just said, hey, I like the content that you're creating, because I was just sharing case studies. I was like, hey guys, here's a recent project we're working on. I would chronicle the day-to-day, like, hey, we're working on a website wireframe, guys, check it out. A week later, I'll show them the final product. I'll show them conversations I've had with the team. So it's having that transparency and showing people that things are getting done and we're seeing success with the clients that we're working with without necessarily selling. It's just like, hey, this is my journey. You guys jump in and join and check it out. And then I decided to introduce that microblog concept because I'd seen some other marketers do it. Kezia, she's an Instagram marketer as well. I saw her do it and I saw the engagement that she had. And so I was like, I can use this concept as well, because we all know that as marketers, one of the best things to do is competitive analysis. Look at what works and take components from that and use them in your own audience. And so I saw that. I saw the engagement and the DMs that I was getting. And we actually closed 12 clients this calendar year just from Instagram alone, just from posting on Instagram, with some of those clients being some high-level deals that we've had continuous work with. And so it just came down to seeing what was working for other competitors or other pages, and then being able to replicate that for our audience.
Yeah, I think that's amazing. And the thing that stands out to me is the amount of value that you were creating in these micro blogs. I think that's one of the things that holds many bloggers back is you're writing, 1,500 word or 2,000 word articles. And if you're doing something that's really good, it takes a lot of time to sit and process and create all this. I know you didn't just sit down and bang out that microblog in 10 minutes, but nonetheless, you found a way to convey pretty complex content and complex information in a very concise, bite-sized, chewable way that is able to trigger information. I think that the thing for me that really stood out is in the content that you created, the information is there, and it's not like, hey, you wrote it, but there's so much of a gap in the how to do it. You actually give references and places to go check out for more information, things like that. But if you just read those threads, a lot of information is there. So if you want to see what we're talking about, you can just check out John on Twitter at John D. Saunders. John, I want to elevate up a little bit more and
let's
talk
do it.
about you as an entrepreneur, right? So you mentioned clients that you've landed through this practice. Talk to me a little bit more about the marketing agency and kind of the way you operate as an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. So for me, I worked full-time. I had a full-time job until I was 26. I started working at 14 and I had always worked for someone else. And I'm one of those entrepreneurs that I don't believe in just, if you have a job, just quitting cold turkey and going into entrepreneurship. I believe that there's a way to either segue into like a side hustle where you're starting to make the money that'll help ends meet and cover your bills so you can become an entrepreneur. But ultimately, when I branched out as an entrepreneur, I felt that I wanted to be able to create a lifestyle that I could build with, still make great money, increase my revenue over time, and still be able to have the freedom to pick up my son every day at 4 p.m., which is, super important to me. And man, I totally believe in some type of a concept of sharing family values, being able to vacation, being able to have deep work sessions where you can work for a consistent amount of time, and then also being able to take that time off. And so for me, building out an agency is not traditional. I don't have a big sprawling office with 50 employees. Ultimately, that's not my goal. My goal is to be able to work from my home office, as you guys can see, camera equipment in the back, because I recently did a YouTube video, but being able to work with a small, tight-knit remote team so that we can build and execute projects for clients. And then we can leverage what works for clients for our own personal projects. And so it's almost like this cyclical cycle, whereas we do a great job for clients, we emulate and take those components and ideas, and then we create our own businesses and execute on those as well. So we can stay small, we can stay nimble by using the revenue from clients to pay bills and cover team expenses, and then being able to fund our own projects like blackwallet.org, where we provide financial literacy content to an audience that's ready for it. And so for me, man, my day starts with, I literally wake up at 5. I jump on the Peloton bike, man. I get about 30 minutes in. My wife and I, we get our son ready for school. I take him to school. I'll do my work day from about 4. And then I'll pick him up and we'll hang out for a couple hours until mommy comes home. We'll hang out a few hours until about 9 or 10. And then some days I'll work from like 10 to 1 if I want to kind of get a head start on the next day. The night prior, I'll always create my to-do list and go through Asana, which is our task manager, as well as Slack for team communication, and just make sure that I'm staying on point with that. So my biggest thing that I would tell people, especially those that are in full-time jobs that are maybe looking to transition into a side hustle or into entrepreneurship, is start slow and build, because digital or the online, the internet basically has empowered everyone. Doesn't matter what color you are, what creed, your nationality, doesn't matter. Anyone can see success because you can build an e-commerce store through Etsy or Shopify or WooCommerce. You can take your ideas and concepts and put them into a course and sell that course. It doesn't matter if you're an expert in backgammon. There's someone online that wants to be able to learn what you can provide, right? Everybody's an expert at something. And so I think that the internet has empowered us to a certain degree. And, everyone, even if you have a full-time job, should definitely be leveraging it. I know that was kind of a tangent, but.
No, you hit on a lot of things. I mean, one, lifestyle, that's the first thing that jumped out to me is lifestyle. You've got your son. You want to make sure you can spend quality time with your son and still grow and drive the business. You talked about the office and the agency and some of the other things that entrepreneurs could do. I want to come back real quick to the lifestyle component. You said you have 8 employees, I believe, correct?
Well, we have 5. I mean, we have sometimes we'll leverage independent contractors, but 5.
Okay, so you have 5 employees. You talked about managing them remotely. You said Asana and Slack are 2 of the systems you use. What are some of the other things? I mean, for those entrepreneurs right now who are either solopreneurs and kind of grinding out, hustling, doing it as a side job, talk about trying to, the initial steps to delegate some of the tasks in your business to help you grow.
Got it. First thing I actually have a Google Doc that I'll give you the link to share with your audience, where it has all of the tools that we use that are 85% of them are free as well. But I'll share that so that you can give them to them at the end. But ultimately, the top tools that we use, one, they're free, which is great. So one is Asana, which is a task management system. There are other ones like Trello or Monday. It's whatever you prefer, whatever's the most easy for you. But I suggest anyone, doesn't matter what business type you run, to have some type of task management system to keep you accountable of the projects you have in your pipeline. 2, if you have a remote team or even if you have staff in office, Slack is another free, great tool that you can use. Slack is a team communication app. Think of it as like WhatsApp for business, where you have these different channels and you have individuals in your team and your staff in specific channels. So one channel could be about marketing, one channel could be about copywriting, and so forth. A few additional tools, Google Drive, of course, we all probably use. I haven't touched Microsoft Office in years. Google Drive has docs, slides, you can do Excel sheets. It has other add-ons that can give it even more components, and that is completely free as well. I think you get 15 gigs a year annually in just free storage, which is phenomenal. Another tool that I like to use is HubSpot for CRM, which is another free tool. They have a completely free CRM for recording any prospects, any leads that you have. Sorry, I'm just going through my list of tools here. Some of my favorites. Let's see. And then the last one, because I know there's just so many. I like Wappalizer, which is a tool, a Chrome extension, which will tell you all the components a competitor is using on their website. So if you guys get a chance to check out some of my content, there's one on competitive analysis, looking at other customers, and I go step by step on just steps and things that you can take. So with that being said, feel free to ask me any questions regarding that, but I will definitely give you guys the full list. I'll give it to you, John, to share with your audience also.
So what are some of the challenges when you started the process of bringing on your team, right? I mean, that first hire, that first employee, what were some of the things outside of the systems, right? But just in the delegation process, what are some things we should keep in mind as we kind of, whether you're looking to hire a virtual assistant or hiring a full-time person on your team, what are some of the challenges that you face there?
One of the first challenges I'd say is when I started, I just kind of like hired somebody and I was like, hey, I want you to build a website, right? I didn't give them enough detail, enough description to do what I thought in my mind would I create. I don't know if that makes sense, but essentially you're like, okay, I want you to build a website, and what you're seeing in your head isn't what they're creating. And so the biggest challenge for me was building out those standard operating procedures before I even hired my first team member. So what I would suggest to anyone you feel overwhelmed, you have a ton of work, your workload is just huge and you feel overwhelmed, is one, it's good because you're learning a lot of these components and aspects of the business. Two, you need to immediately start to outline your SOP. So let me break down standard operating procedures really quick for the audience. This is essentially your blueprint for your business. So if you're a cupcake store owner, it's the actual ingredients and the step-by-step process you make for making your lemon, chocolate mocha cupcake, right? You take the cream and you add it to the milk, you add this specific amount, then you take this, you let it resonate. So it's a step-by-step process, almost a recipe for your business. And this is important because, one, ultimately your business should be built to sell. Everyone should be building a business in order to sell it one day, to create generational wealth or give it to their children or create processes that way they can pull themselves out of it, because you don't want to be 75 still doing the same thing you were doing when you were 30. So next thing you need to do is write down and itemize every single piece and every component of every task that you do. And that was the hardest part for me, man. It was literally sitting down, okay, how do we do this? How do we add analytics to the website? We take Google Analytics, we download the plugin. We take that plugin and we upload it to WordPress. It's like, it's basically dumbing it down so much that you can hand this piece of paper to someone on the street and they can execute it for you. Because what happens then is, as you hire employees or virtual assistants or team members that are going to be focusing on executing, you want them to execute. You don't want them to have to think about it. You want them to go through your list and literally go down and complete something. And then you can take very detailed marketing strategies and tasks, break them into bite-sized chunks, and delegate that. And so for me, as the agency owner, I'm focused on, okay, how can I make this SOP better? How can I improve this process? How can I delegate this better so that my team members understand it? Because if they're not executing it well, then that's on me, because I'm not giving them the information they need to execute it properly. And so that was the biggest challenge, ultimately coming up and creating those SOPs. But dude, once it's done, man, and you start waking up and you see your team members knocking items out in the task management system, especially for tasks that are mundane and very time consuming, I always suggest you hiring individuals on Upwork or Freelancer, where you can even get people offshore, but you have to have your SOPs in order. I'm going to make one suggestion before we jump into the next thing. I don't want to talk too much, but everyone should read, it's a book called The E-Myth by Michael E. Gerber. He talks about how to create systems, how to set up systems in your business, and how to delegate. A lot of people see me post on Instagram and Facebook. 85% of the time, that's not even me. It's someone on our staff just posting on my behalf, because I've set a system in place where I can do stuff like this with you, John, and I don't have to worry if my business is going up in flames.
Yeah, and I love all the tips you gave. And, we primarily focus on multifamily and marketing, but I want to make sure everyone understands that what you're talking about, standard operating procedures, SOPs, this is something that is fundamental to business. Anything you want to scale or grow. I mean, you think about how you can go to a McDonald's in Nevada and have the same exact burger that you get in Chicago, it's because of the clear SOPs. It's not that the cooks are, any better in one place or the other. And when you think of those places that have franchises and anything like that, it really comes down to those standard operating procedures. And from a real estate perspective, one thing that people should think about is if you are managing property, this is a great way to implement this into your business. Think about if you work as either a property management company yourself or you're an asset manager overseeing property management company. Creating SOPs is going to make your job easy. Think about, and this is something we had to come up with when we did a unit turn, because we were talking to a property manager and they turned the unit and had it ready to re-rent. And we walked it and said, this is not ready to rent. And what we realized is that their steps in turning a unit didn't match our expectations, similar to kind of your thought and vision of the website and kind of what was being built. So we actually had to sit and write, which again, I expected them to have this, but it's like, no, let me be crystal clear. My expectations are you're going to clean out the refrigerator, you're going to throw out, and just literally go step by step of all the steps that I expect someone to take. It's almost like a checklist, but now they have that. And they know what to do. So it's not up to interpretation, and it's not up to whether or not I have a phenomenal property manager or I have a bad one. It doesn't matter. Here's a checklist. Just do everything on the checklist and we'll be good to go.
Exactly, man.
And that's where I think as entrepreneurs, I think too many of us, I'm going to put myself in there, we feel that we are integral to the business and we need to be the person doing it. And I think if we really step back and ask ourselves, does it really have to be me, or is there someone else who could do this with the proper training? One technique that I use as well when I first started using virtual assistants and trying to write out every step, I actually started recording it. So I would go on and use the iMovie or whatever, the movie recorder, and I would film my screen and I would just talk. So I would, hey, I'm doing show notes. Here's what we're doing right now. If for instance, you mentioned a couple books. So if we want to link to the books, I'll literally explain, hey, go to Amazon or whatever, find the book, click the link, put it in here. But I would go in and actually do it all and record it, still write out the SOP, but now they've got a video. So for me, it's the part of it is just like, don't call me. I want you to be able to figure it out, so if it's not in the SOP, here's a video that supports and kind of, because there might be little intricacies that maybe I do and I forget to tell you, make sure you use this bold header for the font or whatever, right? So things like that, and just recording it might make it easy too. So anytime if you're working on something and you are trying to onboard, whether it be a VA, especially VAs, because I think people, the first time you're hiring someone, you're not quite clear on what they can do and what they can't do. And but doing the SOP and actually documenting it and then sharing it that way, that's a great way to make sure that they know exactly what it is to do.
Yeah, man. And that's how we lay it out too, because we'll have a Google Doc. That Google Doc will have the step-by-step directions, and then it'll also have a video link. And what we'll do is we'll host it on YouTube as unlisted, so they can click that link, they can watch the video, and then while the video is playing on the right side, we'll have that checklist next to it. So it's like you said, you're creating almost like an archive for how to run your business, and that's what businesses that acquire you really, really look for. And so one last thing with that is I would probably tell your audience to check out Loom, Loom. It's a free Chrome extension where you can record your screen. It'll even have like a popover of your face as well. So if they want to check it out and create one of their first SOPs, feel free, man. It starts to become fun, right? You're like, you get to a point where you're like, well, damn, if I could delegate this, let me see if I could create a process for this too. And then it almost becomes a game of how can I get more off my plate so I can focus on big picture.
Absolutely. And that's a great way to look at it. So you are focusing on the things that are critical that you actually have to do versus just something that needs to get done in your business. So great point there. And we'll certainly link to a lot of the resources that you're listing out as well. I want to talk about content. Let's kind of go back to the content piece.
Okay.
Right? I think most people who are listening understand that, creating content is a great way to build your business, whether you are a multifamily investor looking to raise capital and attract capital for your deals, whether you are an entrepreneur looking to sell more widgets, whether you are a service provider looking to grow your clients. Content is certainly one way to do that. Yet a lot of people struggle with content creation. Sometimes they can do it once or twice. They struggle to do it consistently. They struggle to have the right topics. Talk to me about kind of your process in creating content on a consistent basis that is truly valuable for the audience.
Bet. Love that, man. So Yeah, it's you talk to people about content market or social media posting and scheduling out their content. They're like, yeah, they'll do it for a few days and then they'll kind of fall off. So I have a few recommendations with that. One is batch your content. So pick a day out of the month, maybe a couple of days out of the month where you take a 2 to 3 hour window. You literally block it out on your calendar and you batch and create content back to back to back. So for me, when I record videos, I'll do 4 videos in one take. Good thing is, have 4 shirts and you can literally record those 4 pieces of content back to back. So that's the first suggestion, to really batch your content ideas, create everything all at once. And then you can use Hootsuite or Later to schedule that content out whenever you want to put it out. Because if you do it and you batch it that way, you'll at least have a month's worth of content for you to be able to post. Second thing is focus on 1 to 2 social media platforms and no more. I would even focus on 1. If you're really starting out with social media, focus on 1 social media platform that you can take all your efforts and make it go towards. 1, because once you start to build an audience on that 1 platform, you can always push that audience to other platforms, right? You might have their emails, you might have DMs, you might have a direct connection to them directly. So take that and focus on 1 platform. Also, post consistently day in and day out. That comes back to number 1, whereas you're batching your content. Create mini content as well that you can both take as 1 piece of content and disseminate it into multiple pieces. So let me explain that. 1 post I'll do on Twitter, I'll do a thread. So I'll do a 10 to 15 tweet thread where it's just me breaking down a marketing concept in detail. I'll include links, I'll include images, just so it's easier for people to take and perform an action with. Then I'll take that piece of content, I'll screenshot those and I'll add them on Instagram. Now I have that piece of content on Instagram. Then I'll take either the download or one of the images and I'll post it on Facebook and say, hey guys, make sure you download this free XYZ. Then I can take that content and I can also post it on a Facebook group by answering a specific question. So if you go into a Facebook group, and I know I'm getting into some crazy concepts now, you can go and look, like, for example, if I'm posting a web design checklist, I'll go to a ClickFunnels group and I'll type in web design checklist. And anyone that's mentioned that in the last 6 months, I'll just comment, hey, by the way, I have a checklist if you need it. We use it for all of our clients. You can DM me for info. And you'll get DMs and information from that. So 1 piece of content can essentially become 10 to 15 micro pieces that you can use across the board on other platforms. Also with social media, don't necessarily pay attention to the vanity metrics. Likes, followers, that stuff doesn't really matter. Ultimately, it comes down to how many people are commenting, how many people are actually engaging with your content, and how many people are DMing you or contacting you from that, as well as saves. So on Instagram, and I know I'm jumping around a little bit, the main metrics or the KPIs you want to look at, key performance indicators on Instagram, would be how many people are saving your content, how many people are commenting on your content. I think those are the 2 biggest metrics. So sometimes I'll get 200 likes on a post, but then it'll have 1,000 saves. Or I might get 40 comments on a post and it has 150 likes. So Instagram's getting rid of likes anyways. Focus more so on the engagement and not that, and just stay consistent with what you're doing. I think those are some components that'll help the audience. And I've got some more in my head, but I don't want to go too crazy.
No, I love it because, when you talk about focusing on 1 platform, you can repurpose that content, especially on Instagram. So exactly. I think that's a great tip to figure it out. How do you know what to actually write about?
Good question. So one thing that's helped me a lot is Facebook groups. I think of Facebook groups as almost like, what's the best word to put it? Like a test group, where it's a small amount of people that are essentially your ideal consumer. So for any business that we have, as well as for clients, we'll create a Facebook group and we'll ask questions and poll people in there. So I'll give you an example, because a lot of you might think, oh, well, I need to have thousands of people in there. I started a group called Financial Literacy Tips. It's basically for my blackwallet.org. And so the main thing I did with that was create a group and then just provide content daily on a consistent basis. So just content of, hey, this is how much money Jeff Bezos has right now. Hey, these are some financial literacy tips that'll help you. Or, hey guys, here's what's working for me. So just being consistent in providing content and not even necessarily mentioning the business. Because it's financial literacy tips, it's more of a general term. as opposed to like Black Wallet's Facebook group, because it's something that someone would be more prone to search and join because they're seeing value from it. And then once they're in that group, then you ask questions consistent with what you're looking to promote in the future. So when I was building my book or developing the book, I put the title in there. I put multiple titles and I did a poll. I wrote out the chapter outline. I sent it to the audience, our group, and I said, guys, what do you think about this? Oh, well, John, I think you're missing this. Hey, John, I think you need this. Hey, this looks great, but what about this? So I take that into consideration. Then I send another iteration. I say, okay, guys, what do you think of this? I sent them the book covers, all the concepts. So essentially I had this small knit group of 500 people at the time that are telling me what'll work. So now when that product goes to market and I say, hey guys, the book is live, you have an audience that were active participants in creating this concept, in developing this idea. And now they're like, yo, I got to get this book. I was a part of this. And they feel like they helped me create it, and they did, you know? And so it's really just using that, leveraging that, leveraging that audience and giving them real power and real say into what you're creating, and then basing your content off that. And then just testing. You know, you can test an idea and you think, oh, this is going to hit. And that, you know, it's a flop. So you really have to just test. And then you might think, oh, let me just put this out there and see what happens. And it works. So ultimately, looking at competitors and seeing what's working for them, testing concepts that you haven't seen proven and seeing if they work, and basing that off of what we said prior, just the engagement and what people are looking for, and then leveraging your audience and really getting feedback from them when you create products.
I think the thing that's amazing about kind of the way you're using Facebook groups is that you have a very engaged audience then when you do that, because to your point, they have interest. They have a vested interest in the book, whether they buy it or not. They helped create it. So they do want to see what the final product look like. They do want to read the book and understand the different information that's in there. And they want to share that. I mean, that is a phenomenal tip. And I want to make sure that our listeners know that is a bullseye tip and a bullseye insight. And it's not just about the Facebook group. It's how do you get an engaged, vested audience for anything you're doing. So if you're launching a podcast, if you're launching a blog, this is a phenomenal tip to get engagement, get people vested. Ask them, hey, what kind of topics do you guys want to hear about? What kind of guests should we have? If you've got an event, what kind of speakers should we have? What topics should we cover? And as you're getting people engaging, now you have people who want to see whatever they were talking about. Exactly. So they want to see, you know, the content. They want to come to the event. They want to read the book. They want to download the podcast. And then when you make that next ask, it's an even easier ask. So now it's, hey guys, just launched the podcast. Would you go rate and review it? Okay. I've been riding with you this far. Sure, I'll go check out what you've got there. So I think it's a phenomenal, powerful tip. This is one of those tips, by the way, that I wish I had when I was launching this show. And that's why I want to make sure people hear it and understand it now, because that's the kind of tip that makes a difference between you launching and getting thousands or tens of thousands of downloads or getting tens of downloads, by making sure you're getting that traction. Because you need evangelists. You need people who are going to champion the work that you're doing. If you're giving great value, then you need people to see it. And I think too many of us focus on creating great content or even creating just good content, but not so much how do you get people engaged and wanting to share that content. So that's a powerful, powerful tip. I hope our listeners understand that and really implement some of that into their model going forward. With that said, you hit on really engaging with the group, listening to the group, understanding the challenges they have, what they want to hear about, making sure that they have some say-so in the process. What are some mistakes when you talk to whether it be your clients or newer people using social media? What are some of the key mistakes that you see people making?
That's a good question. So I think one of the biggest mistakes people make is trying to make the content perfect before it's released. I've been a victim of that, where we're like, oh, we want the Instagram feed to look very consistent and clean across the board, which is great aesthetically, but ultimately it's not the best thing for creating content that resonates. And I'll give you an example with Black Wallet. At first we were posting these beautiful, very crisp, vivid images, and they get a few likes here, a few comments there. And then we were like, all right, well, we need to just get content out there that could resonate with the consumer, that we think will perform well. And so we started to do this quick fire content where we create an image or we reshare someone else and provide attribution. We'd look at all the competitive content and see what videos and what content was getting the most shares, and literally just reshare those videos and reshare those posts, of course, giving original attribution to the owner always. They get a benefit from it because they're like, oh, well, you're sharing my content to your audience. And then our audience started to grow really fast. And so we started out with, 2,000 followers. We just had 195,000 on Instagram. And anytime we post something or anytime we share something of a product or something that we want individuals to download, we get a flood of DMs and responses because we built that audience over time. And so I think what people need to do is just get the content out there. Your first video is not going to be perfect. Your first podcast is not going to be that great. You just have to do it. And ultimately you'll get better and you'll improve, because for me, man, I'm an introvert. I couldn't even do this 10 years ago, get on a camera. I'd be stuttering, sweating. I mean, I'm still a little sweaty, but ultimately, man, it really just comes down to practice. And so I say, get the content out there. It's not going to be perfect on the first iteration, but make sure that you're doing it consistently so that you're improving over time. And I think that's a big mistake a lot of competitors make. If you look at the most viral, the most engaging content right now, it's all very like with your camera in front of the phone, just taking care of content. What comes down to it is the meat. No one cares what it looks like. It's the meat of what you're providing. And if that content can resonate with someone and they can take action.
No, I love that. I mean, I think to your point, there are a lot of people trying to get it clean, buying the right equipment and make sure the lighting is right, and making sure the videos look polished. And there's a time and place for that, right?
Exactly. I think that's important too. Yeah. But like you said,
product, man,
you waste all that time, 5 months. Now 6 months have passed. Like, dude, imagine starting a podcast 2 years ago. Like, just starting it 2 years ago. Now it's like everybody has a podcast. So it's a lot harder to kind of make a mark. But 2 years ago, even if your podcast looked like, bad, I won't curse on the show. Even if your podcast looked bad 2 years ago and the content was there and you were providing value, you'd be in the top ranks, and not you specifically. I'm just saying people that have podcasts. But yeah, man, it's really coming down to just, getting it out there, doing the best you can with your ability, and then just, improving as you go along. Like the book, The Lean Startup. I don't know if you've read that. But he talks about MVP, a minimum viable product. Get the product out there, see what the audience likes, and create that product based on what they're providing.
No, that's awesome. I have not read that book. Sounds like a great one. It is that concept is something I actually just heard about in regards to Steve Jobs. The Lean Startup, Eric Rice. Because it's when they talk about the iPhone in particular, or even the iPod, it was the same thing. There was a lot of stuff they wanted to put into those early models. But essentially it was slowing down the process. And they were like, look, let's get something that's good, that is respectable and a great product, but we can always improve. And that's something too, where I think for entrepreneurs, we struggle with that, right? We want to make sure that it's better than what else is out there. And I think better than what else is out there is not what we should be focusing on. I think that we want to build that minimally viable product with the intent to continue to improve and to continue to do better, but get it out there and get going. I mean, you talked about starting a podcast 2 years ago. I mean, we launched just a little more than 2 years ago. And I think awesome. For us,
perfect time.
Part of it was that, even in hindsight, like I wish there were things we could have done differently, because the other part is the promotion. It's one thing to create it and put it out there. It's another thing to actually have a sound model and plan to drive awareness of the product. And I think that's something that many folks don't do as well. So understanding what's there. The other thing I would say too, and John, maybe we could talk about this before we transition to our bullseye round. We've talked a lot about social media. We've talked about blogs and podcasts a little bit. I think ultimately, most marketers are told, go where the people are. So don't just create something that lives by itself. Create something where there's other people there. When you talk about engaging when fishing where the fish are, what are some other tips and tools that we can do to make sure we're actually engaging with our audience and finding our audience? I think sometimes we may think our audience is one type of person, but the responses we get and the feedback we get is a little bit different once we actually start engaging.
That's a good question. So the main part of that question was ultimately, how do we we reach the right people. You're saying?
Yeah. How do we use these platforms to make sure we're reaching the intended audience versus just putting white noise out there?
So I think the best possible solution for that is ultimately looking at the types of people that you want to go after, or the type of not even demographic, but the type of buyer persona you're essentially going after. And a lot of times when you're starting your business or you're beginning it, you might not necessarily know your ideal buyer persona yet. And so I think it's important to just test and see who you're resonating with the most, and then base your content around that. So for me, being a man of color, we work with clients from all types, all shapes, all sizes, everyone, right? We don't discriminate, and we want to be able to service everyone ultimately in regards to demographic. But our main focus is literally startup founders that are millennial age, mostly Black or Latina, but ultimately finding people within that realm that our content resonates with, and going after them ultimately. So I think that in the beginning, it's kind of hard to know where to focus those efforts. And I'm sorry, I'm kind of skirting around the question, but it's really creating content based on your true self, being very transparent and organic, and then seeing who's resonating and who's flocking to you. I'm a geek, so geeks come in all shapes and sizes and colors. And so, let me start that part over. Yeah. I think that's a good question, man. It kind of stumped me there.
Well, I mean, here's what I'm hearing you say, though. I mean, I think that it really comes down to understanding that persona first and foremost, right?
Yeah.
You talked about, even going back to the Facebook groups, is if you're engaged in the platforms, and if you know where these individuals are, it's easier to understand the types of content they're looking for, the types of questions that they have, and you're going to get the DMs, you're going to get, those questions, and that's going to be your spark. So, I mean, part of it is, listening, right? Just listening.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a phone call, what questions, one thing that we've started to do more recently is just pay attention to the conversations we have, which sounds very simple, but we have investor calls. Many times investors ask the same type of questions, but we hadn't documented those questions and then created something that we could just push out that would probably address most of those things up front. And that's something that we started to do. It kind of goes back to the SOP, right? If you find yourself explaining something more than once, document it. And
but that's what we do with our FAQ. Like, we have a long list of FAQs. And so anytime we get like a certain question, a team member can go in there, look, and say, okay, this is how I answer the question. But no, exactly, man. Exactly.
Yeah, no, I love it, man. I think you've given us so much great information, man, to grow as both entrepreneurs and business professionals, whether it be a side hustle, whether it's your main gig, or just really try to delegate, but a lot of great tools and software, as well as great marketing tips. I want to move on to our bullseye round. But before I do that, last question for you in regards to kind of marketing and building the company. You mentioned that your ideal client is more of that entrepreneur, that millennial who is looking to kind of build their business. What kind of businesses do they typically have, or is it kind of pretty much open to pretty much most industries?
It's open. So it can be e-commerce stores. It could be personal brands. It could be, service-based business. And so ultimately it just comes down to giving them a digital presence and ultimately providing some type of online value for their ideal consumer and being able to acquire and get leads. So for me, it really comes down to a few key components. One being web design, right? We've done over 250 plus websites, then some type of lead magnet or lead acquisition plan or funnel. And then ultimately on the back end, just an email marketing campaign to keep that person engaged and active. And in a lot of ways, especially for service-based businesses, you can replicate that across the board as long as you're talking to your ideal consumer. And so for me, we don't only do it for our clients, we've done it for ourselves as well. So I've launched my own e-commerce businesses. I've sold 3 in the last 2 years. And so what I'll usually do is the team and I will come up with a concept. We'll launch an e-commerce store. We'll hit the dips. We'll finally find a stride. And then when we get to a certain point, we'll sell the business and then do it again. And so in this digital day and age, it really comes down to what value can you bring to your ideal consumer and framing that perfectly around for them so that they can come to you as opposed to a competitor. And then just having your USP or unique selling proposition displayed prominently so they know exactly what they're getting from you that they're not getting from the competition.
No, I love it, John. I love all the tips you gave. A lot of great actionable insights on creating your personal brand, whether you're an entrepreneur or running, another piece of business, but great actionable tips. Let's move on to our bullseye round. You ready?
Let's do it. I'm ready.
How has a failure or apparent failure set you up for later success?
Good question. First failure. I'd say losing a client is probably one of those failures that set you up for success, because I always like to look at the mistakes as a learning experience. What did we do wrong? I'll always take it as, what did I do wrong and what did I not execute on to lose this piece of business? And so for the most part, we've been lucky enough to keep most of our clients from inception, but of course, sometimes clients leave, right? So I like to look at the reasoning behind that. And then I like to create an SOP or edit content based on the trajectory of that. So for example, if they're like, well, the cost per acquisition was too high and, it was taking too long for that cost to get lower. And so the way that I would combat that in the future would be, what are some other marketing alternatives that we could have gone after? Maybe we could have done these ads in a different language or different. So it's kind of like going back and seeing what we could fix and then editing and updating those SOPs according to that to make sure that we're moving forward.
Awesome. I love that. What is the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year?
Man, that's a good one. I'm looking at my library right now. The E-Myth, man. The E-Myth is probably that one by Michael E. Gerber. That's the one on creating systems, and it's basically based off the premise of McDonald's, the biggest, of course, real estate owners on earth. But yeah, the E-Myth.
Give me a digital, you know what? I'm going to say this. I was going to ask you for a digital mobile resource, but you've given us digital and mobile resources throughout the entire episode. So we'll link to one of the ones you've already mentioned. All right. What's one thing you know now that you wish you knew when you were starting out?
Whew, that's a good one, man. Man. I wish I knew that you couldn't do it all yourself. You can't do it all yourself. Even if you're a one-person show, even if you're a freelancer, you need to hire or have some type of virtual assistant, project manager. I think it's important to have at least one other person that can help you be accountable and help you get some items off your plate, because overwhelm and burnout are true, man. It's real. And a lot of times you can get burned out before you hit your stride. So that's probably my biggest piece.
What's one thing you know now that you wish you knew 12 months ago?
That's a good one. Oh, there we go. Real estate investing. I wish I knew the power of taking your existing home, getting a HELOC, using that to get your second home, keeping the first home, renting it out, and then using that equity to basically pay the mortgage on the second one. But I've been reading a bunch of real estate books now. Now I understand that concept and I wish I knew more. So 12 months ago, I'd say whatever you want to learn, read about it ASAP. Don't take the time to wait and say, oh, I don't know enough. Just read and execute.
There's a lot of information out there. That's exactly how we got started, by the way, was house hack, duplex, built equity. My
biggest mistake, man.
The next one. Yeah. Now, lots of great information there. What advice would you give to a smart, driven college student about the real world?
I'd say whatever you want to do, get started now while you're in college. If you want to be a digital marketing strategist, build websites for people on campus for free. If you want to become a music producer, learn everything you can right now. If you want to be an astrophysicist, I don't know, go to the nearest event and do what you can. So I always say college is I think it's an important component for creating, just getting yourself out there, being more extroverted, meeting contacts that you can definitely develop and create in the future. But I think that while you're there, you need to be using and leveraging that time to really create your network and your and putting yourself out there.
What are you curious about right now?
Real estate investing, man. That's probably the biggest thing right now. And that all stems from one thing, generational wealth. Once I had a son, man, it was like it changed my whole perspective on everything. So now I'm focused on, okay, how can I, one, create generational wealth and leverage that generational wealth to take care of my family from generations from now, because once I'm gone, that'll be my legacy, and I think that when we look back at guys like Bill Gates, for example, who is a billionaire, an amazing dude. His parents were affluent. You know, a lot of people don't know that, but he grew up in a world where he had every opportunity that was given to him. Yes, he's a genius. He's brilliant and he's great at what he does. And his parents helped him get to a point where his mom was an entrepreneur. She helped him become more extroverted because he was already a genius. His parents took them on ski trips. They saw the world. And so I think having that worldview, having that affluence will continue for generations and generations because of that. And so I want to be the first one to do that in my family and start that way.
Well, I love that. You guys obviously know how passionate we are about real estate, and we're certainly happy to share more information on those things. I think the biggest thing that I love, though, is that you created blackwallet.org to help other people who are the same mindset. So it's not just your own individual goal. You're trying to create platforms that are helping other people understand the power of not just real estate, but investing in general, and how to be better with your finances to impact the next generation. So love all that you're building out as well. Last question for you. Give me the best place to grab a bite next time we're down in Miami.
Oh man, Komodo, we just went there like 2 weeks ago. Phenomenal spot. It's in Brickell in Miami. It's Korean fusion. So it's got a little soul food in there, a little bit of Korean. It's amazing, man. Probably my favorite spot down here. And I'm a big Japanese whiskey drinker. So it's a good spot for me.
All right, Komodo, we'll put that on the list. John, how can our listeners get in touch with you?
You guys can get in touch with me anywhere by just searching John D. Saunders. If you want to hit me up and DM me and ask me marketing questions, I'm an open book. You can hit me on Instagram at John D. Saunders. You can join my free Facebook group. It's bit.ly/top FB group. So check that out. If you guys have any questions, feel free to ask. You know, I answer all my DMs. So hit me up.
John, pleasure talking to you today. You just dropped so many bullseye insights throughout the entire episode. This is one of my favorite shows, and one of the reasons we wanted to pivot to talk more about marketing, because I think that there's so many things that we can do. The multifamily is one side of it, but just like any other entrepreneur, you have to understand how to build your brand, how to attract capital, how to get your name out there to build clients, build customers. And you gave a lot of great actionable insights to help our listeners. So thank you for coming on the show and being so open and honest with us. And I know we'll be in touch soon.
No doubt, John. Thank you for having me. Peace to the audience, and hit me up if you can.